I'm sure you're quite juiced up on AI already. So we'll start with something less artificial and more real. We're going to talk about testing and test automation. And Christina will kick us off in kind of her and Siemens' journey in terms of achieving a faster and a more efficient testing within their Salesforce and their integrated ecosystem environment, and kind of how her team went through kind of understanding how testing can bring efficiency, evaluating different platforms or solutions out there, and then making a decision, and how that journey has been. Christina leads the release management and administration of Salesforce at Siemens, and I lead the product strategy at ACCELQ, which is a test automation platform. And surprised that Siemens did choose ACCELQ at the end, but I'll let Christina talk about it, and over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Guljeet. Hi, everybody. My name's Christina Graham. I head up our Salesforce administration and release management team at Siemens DISW. So we've been working with ACCELQ for a couple years now, and we wanted to share a story. So first, quick poll. Who here has only been using manual testing within their Salesforce environment? Yeah, a couple? So that means everybody else is using some form of testing automation. So are you guys currently using testing automation or looking to move into a testing automation tool? All right, we've got a quiet group today. We'll move into the next ones. So Siemens, we were looking at multiple tools over quite a few years for something that would allow us to minimize our users needing to be able to use manual testing and speed up a lot of the responses that we were getting in the system. So some of the areas that we were struggling with were inconsistent testing. So we've got a multitude of changes that are running through our Salesforce environments daily. So 5 days a week, we're deploying to our production org, and there's times we've got stuff going on in the weekends too. So how do we simplify and standardize what people are testing within our Salesforce environment? Some of the other issues that we were having was a complex ecosystem. So Salesforce has moved into being the core structure of our ecosystem. We've got multiple systems integrating information in and out outside of Salesforce. And what do we do to be able to ensure that the things that are being tested, we're not running into failures, we don't have issues with integrations being down? We want to be able to test those end to end within our environment. So no longer saying that one of our tests is Salesforce specific, it's one tool in an ecosystem. So how do we get from end to end, point A to B, with all of our tests that we're running in the system? The other issue we're having, especially as we're talking about end-to-end testing, is how much time that takes. We've got issues with users having access to the right environments, having the right permissions to be able to run persona testing, and just the amount of effort it takes to create those data records to be able to run the tests that you're looking for. Some of our final challenges that we were working with was, number one, a lot of the tools that we had internally were for developers or our test engineers. They are great for incredibly technical folks that are okay with developing their test cases, but it didn't allow our business users to be able to write something in a native language to be able to create their own test cases. So we weren't looking to only have a tool that supported our IT division. We wanted to bring and enable our business users to be able to create tests of their own. And finally it's related to time intensive, but it's a cost implication. So when we've got folks spending time doing manual repetitive tests and manual work to be able to set up test cases, we're not allocating their time efficiently. If they're working on something and redoing it every single time they have an enhancement or bug fix coming their way, it was our time to automate it so that we could limit the amount of time folks are spending in repetitive tasks. So for us, the answer was clear. We knew we needed a test automation tool. We didn't know where we wanted to go for that, especially with having a Salesforce-focused area that also needed to support multiple systems in our landscape. So we already kind of spoke on a little. We needed one true fact, which is we wanted to ensure our business users could use the tool relatively easily and effectively. We wanted a process that if we have somebody creating those test cases and those scripts, that they can be reused across multiple landscapes, across multiple groups. So we don't want our users creating over and over the same login methods, or maybe the same opportunity setup to go through your quoting process. We wanted them to be able to reuse and plug in those pieces into their more complex test cases, so that even for the automation setup portion, we're spending less time after the initial investment of time. As mentioned, we needed to be able to scale outside of Salesforce. We wanted to be able to test within our ERP systems, within our single sign-on and multi-factor authentication processes. We require persona testing to be able to see what our end users are doing, but also the other parts of the business. We want a sales rep to be able to start the process in the test. We want them to be able to log out, see what the partner sees for that same exact testing scenario through the admin functions within our ERP systems for any of the approvals and some of the steps that we have end-to-end processes through our ordering process. Another big focus for us, especially with our team being involved with release management, was a DevOps integration. So we wanted the flexibility to say, do we want tests to kick off after our deployments are completed? Do we want flexibility to run regression suites on a nightly basis? Or do we want flexibility to be able to run ad hoc test cases after specific enhancements, hot fixes, or processes are deployed to our next environments? So we wanted to be able to say that any of these options are available for us and could be customized based on the feature or project that we're working with. The last two that we had as far as kind of our first set of priorities was headless testing. So one of the things that we wanted to avoid was redundancy if we were going to an automated platform. So we didn't want somebody that was going to need to babysit the test cases to kind of move them through that process. We wanted it to be able to run in the background. We want that QA business member to be able to work on other things, even if they have something running as far as one of the regression suites. And we also didn't want it to interrupt current processes. So we wanted something that we could set up even on different server levels for parallel execution so that we could keep test cases running and not queuing up against each other. So there was multiple facets related to the headless testing and just a non-interruptive process for us when we're running tests. And then finally, we also were looking for some self-healing functionality. So if you're adding a new button to the page or a new pick list value, but it's not critical to that test case, we don't want it to block that work just because it's noticing that there's been a small change to the UI. We wanted it to be flexible to UI changes as long as there wasn't major feature impacts to what you were looking to test. And then part two of our evaluation, so for our requirements, we were looking for something that had strong reporting and dashboards. We're already very familiar with what Salesforce does, and we wanted to ensure that we could have something similar in a testing automation tool. So to be able to pull together those test cases, those results, to be able to better inform our end users of the health of the system. We already spoke on parallel execution capabilities, which was a high priority for us. And we also were looking for something that, well, is not tool agnostic, but had the ability to really hone in on Salesforce's unique setup and allowed us to test functionalities like our mobile for our browser support and our multi-platform, going into different browser experiences, because even in Salesforce, we see different browser experiences for our end users. Being able to go through and test flows and other functionality in the system relatively easily. We also needed to be able to do API testing, so that's been a big initiative for us. We wanted to ensure that from an IT perspective, that we had the flexibility and the availability to run tests against our APIs. We have a very large grouping of integrations within the system, which you're always looking for stability within those integrations and to be able to highlight when there's issues. So we want to get in front of that through our environment. So it's us pushing out that there might be something that needs to be checked on, instead of our end users, raising their hand, submitting a ticket to tell us when there may be a problem. One of the other areas was version control. We wanted to make sure that in the testing platform itself, we had the ability to back up, restore, reversion any of the test cases where maybe something got edited that shouldn't have, maybe there was a deletion that shouldn't have had to happen. So we wanted to ensure that we could connect it into a version control process, just like we do the rest of our platform and processes where we're making changes to the system. We were also looking at scalability. So one thing that we struggled with a lot of the tools that we looked at was when you're looking at it in volume. So just in the tool itself, when you've got 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 more test case creation scenarios, we didn't want the system to, to feel impacted on the speed and the availability of the system. So that was an area of focus for us. And finally, it was the quality of training and the support that we were getting from the company. We all know that it can make or break you if you end up with a company where you're constantly submitting support, you're constantly asking questions, you're not getting answers. I will say uniquely with ACCELQ, not only was the onboarding process super easy with being able to meet with them and having them do multiple sessions to onboard our users and having availability to do refresher courses throughout the year, but the support group themselves is incredibly responsive for us. So with that in mind, why did we choose ACCELQ? So we had quite a few different applications that we looked at. We ran through analyses, we ran through proof of concepts, and at the end of that, ACCELQ was our clear winner for us. So not only did they meet all of our criteria for our requirements when we were looking for a tool, it was an incredibly exciting tool for our end users. Our business users were excited to use it. Our IT folks were excited to use it. The biggest thing that our end users continued to say was the amount of time that it was saving, even through our proof of concept. Because we had tons of data records that had to be created for some of these processes, where we've got business users spending hours or even days where they're justifying the steps and going back through those steps to be able to get to creating an order, creating a quote. They're trying to go all the way from when we've got a lead or a contact through the entire process in the system, and how do we do that effectively? So that was a huge feedback area for us with our end users. So it was, not only were they excited, it was getting them in there with their hands on the tool. They could use it, they could create their own test cases. We were able to integrate with our APIs. We were able to do positive and negative tests with our APIs. We could log in and function through other applications. So we had homegrown tools, we had standard ERP systems, marketing systems. We were able to scale those test cases through all of the applications that we tested through. We also had a very large range for reporting. So an area for us to focus was, how do we now see all of these results? What do we do with them, right? We want to be able to analyze where we're getting positives, where we're getting failures, and then how do we get that information back to our end users? We're able to not only report and create graphical dashboards, but we were able to send those as automated notifications via email or by Teams if you've got a group of folks that are looking at these test case results. And then finally, as mentioned for us, it integrates with Salesforce. It also integrated with our DevOps process. So for us, we have it integrated with our change management solution. So our users can go in and initiate a test case if they want to, directly off of our user story process, all the way through being able to schedule those regression suites or automatically run specific suites after deployments are completed. So for us, it met all of the requirements that we were looking to do from Siemens' perspective. So I know that I had mentioned that before. We actually started using the tool in 2023. This was with an initiative for a CPQ Plus migration. So where we started with was a very project-specific focus, which has now expanded into multiple of our agile teams. It's also expanding further into our QA organizations. So we've continued over the last few years to be able to constantly improve the quality of tests that we're running, and then also improve the reach that we are getting with our end users. So for us, it's been a great journey to be able to automate a lot of those test cases and a lot of those processes that were spending our end users' time unnecessarily. It's shifted our bug identification further left in our process. So instead of having folks see this in UAT testing, or even in some cases before QA testing, we're able to run these tests as far back as our dev environments and all the way up and including, in some cases, your production org. Not for a full end-to-end test, but if you're looking at doing something like you're monitoring certain functionalities, you want to see positive results from some of your APIs, you're able to specialize and customize for each of those environments what information you need to see back from the system. And it's also allowed those members that were focused on the tedious manual tasks to be able to expand into other areas. We've already automated the things that they were spending repetitive time on, and now we've moved them into some of the more customized testing that needs to be done when you do need an individual to focus in on some of those test cases. So allowing and removing that from our end users from the automated side allows them to adapt quicker to the other pieces of the business that need critical attention. And then finally, kind of a unique spin for us is knowledge transfer. So when you think about it, when you're onboarding new users to your system, you have an idea of where your priority areas are, but if you've got your suite of priority test automation scripts, and you know that those are the critical areas of your business, now you're able to share those areas, show those screenshots and recordings in some instances to your newly onboarded members. So not only are you creating these from the purpose of being able to reuse them as a testing tool, but you're able to bring in your QA members or your testers quicker because now you have a repository of screenshots, directions, test steps that show them where your priority areas are. So you don't need an individual to walk them through that end-to-end process. Now I have something in the system that shows them exactly what they need to know about those. And we can also trend for them and existing users where we're constantly seeing issues. So we've had situations where you keep running into the same failure in different permutations of those test cases, and well, now we have that information to act on it so we can prevent it in the future. So we are very excited to continue to work with ACCELQ on this. We are working more into our monitoring and production, and we are constantly expanding into other areas of our business so that we can bring them in to the ACCELQ fold with our group. So to speak a little bit more on the future for ACCELQ and their automated testing, I'd love to hand it over to Guljeet.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's no better way to hear it directly from the lens of a customer on what their process and journey has been. I know we have a couple more minutes, so I'm just going to rush through. Right? I just wanted to share our future in terms of how ACCELQ as a platform is looking at generative AI. And I want to start a little bit at a down note, right? We are looking at the generation paradox. And what I mean by that is it's really easy in this day and age to just generate stuff. So you may think that generating a script is the answer, but that's exactly where our philosophy lies. We think that if we just generate more script at you, it's going to actually make your life harder than bringing that efficiency you need, right? So the way we're looking at it is really solving the technical debt problem. So for that, we've come up with a series of agents that do basically align with that core philosophy of ours, right? So we have the discovery agent, which can learn the application, discover individual behaviors on each screen, and then come up with a set of initial scenarios that that agent recommends to give you a kickstart in your regression suite journey, right? The automate agent is your prompt, right, which is kind of like your GPT prompt. which can take in your manual test case, your user story, your any intent that you are looking to automate, convert that into an automation. The dry agent, which is kind of my favorite one, is the one that Christina talked about, which is the difference between a tool and a platform is what is giving you that scalability and robustness. I don't want it to just generate things. Can it reuse? Can it understand my context? Can it do it in a context sensitive manner and not generate too much for me, right? And that's exactly what kind of the optimized agent does. Christina talked a little bit about self-healing. We are taking that and injecting LLM power into that self-healing so that that self-healing also understands your business process changes, much more deeper changes, which now LLM can help us heal better than what machine learning did, which was our kind of already the previous generation one. And then of course the analyzer and the insight agent, wherein you can pretty much tell the agent, can you go get me the most vulnerable test for this module? Based on the history of the data, it can go create that suite for you. That needed a bunch of parameters and risk-based analysis and business criticality analysis and kind of slicing and dicing of data. The agent can help you build that suite for you so that the efficiency in what should be tested is a lot more optimized. That's kind of where we are looking at the future. This version is already live. We are already offering this to our customers in terms of what they can take advantage of now. But I would say, time is going to mature this product a lot more as this technology itself evolves. The last final note I wanted to quickly end it with was we are also venturing quite deep into testing of AI. So if you have Agentforce or other systems which have AI in it, we can do toxicity, bias scoring, hallucination scoring, answer relevancy, all these different metrics that can test the output of your LLM systems. So whether it be just a chat system or an agent, or whether it be your MCP getting introduced into your application architecture, or even RAG applications. So that's kind of the final note that I wanted to leave you all with. Thank you again for joining us, and if there are questions, we both are just going to hang out on the corner and you can come talk to us. Thanks again.
Thank you.